KSC presence. An enormous cave has been discovered in Canada, and nobody has ever stepped foot inside. It's spring 2018, and a group of wildlife experts are gazing down upon the beauty of the scenery in a remote part of British Columbia from their helicopter. The boffins had been tasked with tallying the number of resident caribou. But as they looked out over the stunning landscape, they spotted another feature that took their breath away, one that until then no one had ever known was there. Canada itself is a vast land, boasting diverse geographical features and a wide array of wildlife to boot. By area it is the second biggest country in the world, yet only about 35 million people live there. Indeed, it's actually one of the most underpopulated nations on Earth, at least in terms of its human inhabitants. The sheer size of Canada, as well as the relatively low impact of human settlement, means that the country retains a variety of ecosystems. To the west, for instance, lie the Canadian prairies, while to the north can be found an Arctic desert. Head still further west, to British Columbia, and you'll discover an expanse of dense forest. Canada as a whole is said to contain some 70,000 species of fauna and flora. However, even within British Columbia alone, a great level of biodiversity is found. Indeed, given the comparatively low levels of human interference in the region, wildlife threatened throughout the U.S. has actually been able to thrive there. Animals such as bears, beavers, marmots, wolves and caribou can all be found in British Columbia. Many rare species of bird, including hawks, eagles, and ospreys, soar in the region's skies. Meanwhile, in the province's well-stocked rivers, one might come across trout and salmon, and along the coast creatures such as porpoises and whales are a majestic sight. There remains, then, a rich and varied ecosystem throughout British Columbia today. That's not to say, however, that wildlife does not face threats throughout the region. To the contrary, in fact, a number of the creatures found there have been designated as endangered. Examples of animals native to British Columbia whose numbers are waning include the spotted owl, the American white pelican and the Vancouver Island marmot. The loss or damage of these creatures' habitat is considered to be a contributing factor to their population declines. Oftentimes, this damage occurs as the result of human activity. Across Canada as a whole, over 400 species of animals and plants are considered to be at risk. And it is in the areas most affected by humans that the highest numbers of vulnerable species reside. To mitigate this, the Canadian government grants protections to some of these areas and certain species within them. One such protective measure has seen Canada split into 39 different natural districts. The initial aim of this action was to eventually establish at least one national park in each of the districts. Today, the country has 47 such protected habitats in 29 of the 39 territories. However, national parks are not the only areas protected throughout Canada. Indeed, there are also a number of provincial parks found across the country. Just as with the national parks, their provincial counterparts were established to help protect the country's natural environment. Provincial parks continue to be established throughout Canada right up to the present day. However, the first one was created more than 100 years ago. This was Queen Victoria Park, which encompasses the area overlooking the world-famous Niagara Falls. Over time, provincial parks began to be established across the whole country. Indeed, British Columbia was the first of the provinces to Canada's west to designate an area as such. It did so in 1911 with Strathcona Provincial Park, located on Vancouver Island. Where Strathcona Provincial Park led, a great many more followed. In 1938, for instance, the largest park in British Columbia, Tweedsmuir, was established. Another, Wells Gray, came into existence just a year later. Wells Gray is today just one of no fewer than 600 parks to be found scattered throughout British Columbia. It is, however, among the province's largest. Indeed, the habitat accords protected status to some 1.3 million acres of land within its boundaries. There are reportedly some 700 species of vascular plant, That is, ones that suck up and distribute nutrients, to be found throughout Wells Gray Park. Furthermore, at least 219 different sorts of bird inhabit the area. In addition, no fewer than 56 types of mammal live there too. Wells Gray bears the moniker Canada's Waterfalls Park, owing to the fact that it contains at least 39 torrents. In truth, the area can boast many more, but only 39 have specifically been named. The largest of these include the Spayhats, Helmckn, and Silvertip waterfalls. Wells Gray Park is also home to the southern section of the Caribou Mountains. The tallest of the Caribou Peaks are a part of a group known as the Premier Range. The summits within this set are named after 11 Canadian Prime Ministers, as well as one of their British counterparts, and a single head of British Columbia. A number of rare and vulnerable species inhabit the areas in and around the Caribou Mountains. These include bull trout, mountain goats, and grizzly bears. And, as the name clearly suggests, the area is also home to caribou. Caribou have been found throughout British Columbia for millennia. However, changes to the creature's ecosystem in modern times have posed a considerable threat to their survival. Indeed, province authorities estimate that their local population has shrunk from 40,000 at the beginning of the 20th century to fewer than 19,000 today. In response to the challenges facing the caribou population in British Columbia, the government has sought to take action. To this end, it has commenced a program which aims to protect herds of the majestic mammals throughout the province. Naturally, an important step in protecting the animals is keeping up to date with their numbers. And it was precisely for this purpose that a group of experts ventured into the skies above Wells Gray Park in April 2018. The Canadian Ministry of Environment and Climate Change sent the crew to fly over the park by helicopter. But during their survey of caribou, they ended up spotting something quite different. As they were flying over a particularly secluded area of the park, the team noticed a massive hollow in the landscape beneath them. It was a cave, full of snow and notably deep. Indeed, it was of such a size that the man piloting the chopper that day, Ken Lancour, felt he should inform the park authorities. A biologist by the name of Bevan Ernst was also on board the helicopter at the time. Clearly a sci-fi fan, Ernst informally christened the cave Sarlex Pit. The nickname referenced the lair of the monstrous desert-dwelling beast which gobbles up victims in the 1980s blockbuster movie Star Wars: Return of the Jedi. Following its initial discovery aboard the helicopter, a group of scientists began to study Sarlex Pit in earnest. These experts looked at images taken of the hollow. And in September 2018, a team, led by Catherine Hickson and John Pollock, set out to investigate the cave firsthand. Speaking to Canadian national broadcaster CBC in December 2018, Hickson recalled her initial reaction upon first arriving at the cave. "It was absolutely amazing," she enthused. "I immediately recognized that this was very significant." In addition to Hickson and Pollock, the exploration team was made up of Lancour, the helicopter pilot who was part of the initial discovery, Todd Houghton, and Lee Hollis. Another person, Chaz Yanj, helped with the investigation by working remotely. Together, the team set about attempting to measure the size of the cave. Pollock was in charge of generating a 3D image of the cave using laser measuring devices. Hickson, meanwhile, studied the surface of the cave. And Hollis actually began to probe the cavern's depths, becoming probably the first person ever to venture inside it in the process. Hollis set up his ropes alongside a powerful waterfall streaming down into the cave. And then he descended some 260 feet into the hollow. And despite his 31 years' experience of caving across 3 continents, he was left awestruck. "It was a privilege to make the first known descent," Hollis told Canadian Geographic magazine. "My focus was purely on rigging, rockfall hazards, and avoiding the powerful white water that could have dragged me into the abyss. This is by far the largest and most impressive entrance pit I've ever encountered." By utilizing each of their expertise, the team ascertained that the cave's opening measures about 330 feet in length and a little less than 200 feet in width. However, Water vapor thrown up by the fall makes it difficult to say for sure how far down the cave actually goes. Estimates suggest that it's between 440 feet and 590 feet deep. It's about the size of a soccer field, Hickson informed CBC in December 2018. So, if you think of a soccer field and you put that soccer field on its end, so you have this pit going down. Think about this giant circular or oval hole that just goes down and down and down. It is truly amazing. The water gushing into the cave is thought to run into a subterranean river which stretches out for well over a mile. If these estimates are correct, it would imply that the cave is one of the largest ever discovered in Canada. For now, though, water levels are preventing further investigations to confirm this. In any case, the cave is undoubtedly a momentous find. "I've been in some of the biggest caves in the world," John Pollock stated to Canadian Geographic. "And this thing has an entrance that is truly immense, and not just by Canadian standards." Given the scale of the cavern, it might seem bizarre that it has never previously been discovered. Yet its sheer size means that an average mountaineer in the area would have struggled to explore it. Hence, Pollock is confident that nobody has ever previously entered the pit. Moreover, there are no records of the cave's existence. The entrance is sufficiently notable that a descent attempt would have been written up by mountaineers, cavers or park staff if it had been encountered in the past 40 or 50 years, Pollock explained to Canadian Geographic. No such account exists in caving or mountaineering literature. Another factor is that Sarlex Pit is located in an extremely remote part of Wells Gray Park. And so it is extremely unlikely, according Pollock, that passers-by would have stumbled across it. Indeed, it was only by flying overhead in a helicopter that the cave was spotted in the first place. "This cave is truly in the middle of nowhere," Pollock told Canadian Geographic. "It's out there in mountainous terrain, surrounded by glaciers and at the bottom of a 45-degree avalanche slope that rises 2,000 to 2,500 feet above it, meaning you can't go to it in winter. This is a wild place." In spite of the cave's isolated location, Pollock has nonetheless refused to disclose its precise position. That's because further study of the cave is planned down the line. Experts are now preparing for a further cavern probe in 2020. The cave will be assigned a proper name following discussions with local First Nations, the indigenous inhabitants of the region. But in the meantime, its informal nickname of Sarlex Pit is a fitting nod to the wondrous nature of the discovery. Indeed, this point was not lost on Hickson. "We think everything is known and everything has been discovered," Hickson told CBC in December 2018. "But here's a major discovery that is made in today's world and likely has never been seen before and certainly not explored before. It's just a message that there is still stuff out there yet to do and yet to be discovered."